Hello and welcome to the program Healthy Living on Trust Television. I'm Aisha Salihu. Mental health disorders and management needs are not given the much needed attention and priority in Nigeria according to research. Disorders like anxiety and depression are said to predominantly affect women, while substance disorders are more common in men of different age groups. Statistically, women have higher rates of depression, anxiety disorders, body dysmorphic disorder, and eating disorders. They are also affected by mental health concerns such as postpartum depression and premenstrual dysphoric disorder. On this episode of the program, we will explore some of these medical conditions that could predispose one to mental health disorders. Experts say the constant pain on patients dealing with one form of medical condition or another and support from caregivers, especially health professionals, have tendencies of predisposing these group of people to at least one mental health disorder.
Every chronic medical condition has the potential of generating a mental health disorder in a person. For example, because these are prolonged, these are not like malaria or something you treat like a headache that you just stick paracetamol for. So it's prolonged, it's chronic, and cancer is one of, like on the top of that list. So you see a person that is diabetic. Now they have to be cared for because of the diabetes, they had gone blind. Now they are unable to help themselves. So it predisposes them to depression, anxiety. So every chronic medical condition predisposes the person to a mental health disorder, especially depression from sickle cell, like you mentioned. Imagine a person having painful crises almost every week, almost every month, or something like that, and the person has to be hospitalized, get lots of needles in the person. It definitely would predispose such a person to mental health condition like depression or anxiety. Regarding the caregivers, now a caregiver is someone that is responsible for, let's say, a sick person, right? So a huge part of their lives they spend with that sick person. Now it will predispose that person to feeling bad, a sad state, especially when it's a very challenging condition. For example, cancer, that a terminal condition, terminal state, or the kind of condition where the person knows that they would have to need help for the rest of their life, or almost the rest of their lives, right? So it's a burden because it weighs on that person, the caregiver, emotionally. It weighs on them psychologically, having to tend to a patient that is sick. It weighs on the person. That is why it will interest you to know that medical workers, medical healthcare professionals are among the highest of mental health disorders. Yes, because being around sick people, there is just no way it doesn't touch you, right? Now imagine if you had to take care of one person for a very long time, being around the person, seeing the person in pain, seeing the person unable to do things that we were able to previously do, it touches you somehow, So caregivers also have to watch their own mental health and check, how is this affecting me? What are my coping mechanisms? Generally, we know that 1 in 8 women would suffer from one common mental health disorders like depression and anxiety. 1 in 5 women actually, right? So 1 in every 5 women has a chance of coming down with depression or anxiety. That would be 1 in every 8 to 12 men, right? So we see the trend. Women, for example, there's more chances of developing anxiety, depression, while men have more chances of developing some mood disorders, right? Younger generations, there's increased chances of developing substance use disorders because we know the drug epidemic that is going right now all over the world. So we see these trends. Older people, for example, they have more chances of coming down with depression or anxiety, for example. So we see a difference in them. You are less likely to see an older person coming down with a substance use disorder, less likely, or it's there, right? And a woman coming down with some certain kinds of mental health disorders. So these are like some of the trends. Some are common with younger people, substance use disorders, for example, that trigger other mental health conditions that might have been on the line or in the family line. Because a lot of these predispose women to depression and anxiety, honestly. Hormones part of it, right? Biology is also part of it. And I think to a large extent, women tend to take on more emotional stress, or I would say, compared to men. So these are some of the things that predispose women to developing more anxiety and depression, for example. So societal pressure, we cannot remove that. Societal pressure, family pressure, like I said, biology, financial pressure. So when you aggregate all these things, they are like small triggers from different places that come together to make the person develop some kind of depression, right, or anxiety, or any other kind of mental health, so, or a nervous breakdown, right, or panic attack, for example. They are all combined. So there's societal pressure. You have to be at certain age. You have to be married at this age. Now you're getting close to that age and you don't even have a boyfriend, right? And the person is worried that how would I then, or family members are saying, you're not married yet. I recently had a lady send me a message on Instagram, and she was like, she's just 25 and she's feeling pressure to get married already. And she really is feeling pressure. So she's running into depression. There's panic there, there's anxiety there, because there's this expectation that she has imbibed that society wants from her, and she's unable to meet up. So by the time you combine that with financial goals that people have set for themselves, by this year I must save $500 million, I must make, and then you're unable to make those targets. It weighs on you, and a huge society putting the impact, the demands and expectations. These are all part of things that increase chances of someone developing a mental health disorder. I think we bottle things down a lot, and then it ends up imploding or exploding, especially in Nigeria. Nigeria was actually described as the happiest country in the world at one time, because people were always smiling, and we are described as suffering and smiling, right? Suffer and smile. So I think a huge part of Nigeria learns to adapt. And sometimes the mechanisms of coping, it really predisposes to a lot of mental health disorders. And people need to now go into the use of substance to quiet down or to boost themselves up. That is why even right now we have a lot more epidemic of substance abuse in the country. On first instance, I think it's people around that notice that there has been a change in the person, and then it comes out as a concern. For example, somebody is becoming a lot more withdrawn, more isolated. They don't see it initially that I'm becoming more withdrawn, I'm becoming more isolated, right? So it's a family member or a friend that says, oh, you've becoming more withdrawn, more isolated, you're keeping to yourself, or you're becoming more irritable, or you're showing some weird behavior, right? For example, you say, oh, you walk weird nowadays, you look weird, and you laugh weird. And this was not how you used to behave before. So I think people around are usually the first to notice changes in people's mental health. Only a person that is already very much aware of their own mental health can really pick these changes as quickly as possible. Most mental health challenges or mental health conditions are tied to the emotional state of the person, right? So how the person was feeling, or some specific situations, experiences around the person that triggered some level of emotions in the person can be triggers to mental health conditions. The use of substance also can be triggers to mental health conditions. Emotional state, like I mentioned, for example, trauma. There's a situation where the woman divorced from the husband, and then that became a trigger for a mental health state. She went into depression, anxiety, and same also vice versa. There are men that have also experienced severe anxiety, depressive episodes, some or even manic episodes from a divorce, for example, right? So the triggers are a wide range, from use of substance to traumatic experiences. So first of all, you need to understand what are the triggers, what are the sources of the triggers, and then come up with coping mechanisms for it. For example, if it's in the case of a caregiver that is taking care of a sick patient that has cancer, for example, so you want to build a community. Who are the other people that are also taking care of this patient? Do you have time to share how you really feel? Because there's one thing to see somebody that is really the victim and you, the caregiver, not being able to, how do you want to talk about how you're feeling when see the person that is actually suffering it. And very little attention is paid to the person that is taking care, because they are not anticipating that that they would also feel some type of way. So building a community, even caregivers of these people, for example, the sick patient, they need support as well, right? And they have to be aware that this work I'm doing is going to weigh on me mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and I have to come up with a way to check myself regularly. For example, every week, every month. How do I feel? What are my activities like? Has there been changes? Am I sleeping better? Am I still eating better? Eating okay? These are some of the pointers we used to check if the work is becoming so stressful or pulling so much weight on your mental health that is affecting your daily activities. Awareness, first of all, because if you do not know that this is how you feel when you're in a certain state, if you do not know symptoms that tend towards depression or symptoms that tend towards some other stuffs like psychosis, mania, for example, you would not be able to catch them on time, right? But if you notice that, okay, you are aware of symptoms that are associated with depression, for example, you will say, okay, how have I been sleeping? So the person can come up with a checklist for themselves. Sleep, food, daily activities, pleasurable activities that I used to do. How have I been sleeping? Have I been sleeping okay? Do I find myself waking up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep again? Or is it difficult for me to fall asleep? How is my appetite? Have I lost appetite, or I'm eating too much compared to the way I used to eat before? Am I feeling more withdrawn? Am I feeling more sad? Am I having weird thoughts in my head? So if the person can come up with these checklists and says, okay, this is okay, this is okay, with that, and if they do it regularly, they'll be able to pinpoint if there's a difference, if there's a trend, if there's a downward spiral of their sleep pattern, their eating habits, their behavior. A person that used to like watching football all of a sudden doesn't care so much to watch football. There's something, it's a pointer, right? So if a person can objectively analyze this and say, I'm no longer finding eating food enjoyable. I'm no longer sleeping good. I used to enjoy watching football. Now I don't enjoy watching football again. That's a pointer. So from the sick person's perspective, this is what we say, okay, it's like you're tending towards a depressive episode again. Or in the case of mania, it's like, am I becoming too flamboyant? Am I spending excessively? Like, do I just go to places and spend without? And a weird one is, my sex drive has it increased beyond normal? These are pointers as well. So when you're able to make this checklist and check this, check this, check this, check this, it can tend towards one area or the other. Am I becoming more fearful? Am I having more thoughts about the future? Am I being suicidal? Do I think about death or dying? How often do I do that? Do I think about harming somebody, right? So if a person is able to objectively check these things and answer these questions, I think that such a person can self-assess, analyze themselves and say, okay.
This discourse is not one that can be easily exhausted. There are different perspectives to analyze and address mental health disorders if lasting solutions are to be effected. We'll go on a quick break and we'll be back in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. If you're just joining in, this is Healthy Living on Trust Television, and the conversation has been around mental health concerns, exploring some medical or health conditions that serve as predisposing or risk factors and the struggles of people living with these disorders, while preferring ways to cope and manage these disorders.
There's a huge role that community plays in helping someone that is going through a challenge. I call that social capacity. So there's a role that family plays in helping somebody in the treatment of their mental health condition. There's a role friends play, reliable friends, right? Reliable family. There's a role for each of these, because one thing about mental health conditions, it is never treated alone. You cannot isolate one mental health condition without some level of social capacity. So there's a place for it. There's a place for professional help where the person is unable to cope using these other coping mechanisms, is unable to still function. Then there's a need for medical treatment that might need prescriptions of some medications like antidepressants, antipsychotics, for example, mood stabilizers, for example. There's a place for all of that. So treatment encompasses a lot of things, from the psychotherapy type treatment to the medical therapy, to the medical treatment, pharmacotherapy, to community, right? To being in a functional, healthy group. There's a place for each of these. Okay, so that's word, I'm depressed. Sometimes people are sad, right? And they confuse it with depression. Depression, there's a clear guideline for saying someone is depressed. So persistent feeling of sadness, hopelessness, helplessness, for about a 2-week period or more, right? So you'll be feeling persistently sad, helpless, hopeless for that period of time. Yes, diagnosis of depression can be made. Although now, you shouldn't self-diagnose, because sometimes they are like, okay, why have you been feeling persistently sad or in quote-unquote depressed? You know, how's your mood been? There are a lot of other pointers. I've had these somatic symptoms as well. You have headaches, pains somewhere, you know that it's pain somewhere, but you check, there's nothing broken there, but you just feel the pain persistently, right? So there's a criteria to diagnose each of these mental health conditions, including depression. So if someone is confused, if maybe, am I just sad or am I actually depressed? Do I need a more specific kind of help, or is this something I can actually manage? Now, here's the thing. If someone is concerned enough, there's something there. That's the truth. If someone is concerned enough that they need to talk to somebody, then that person needs to be taken seriously. If somebody is saying, I have thoughts of killing myself, that needs to be taken seriously. Don't even say, you want to kill yourself because of man. No. Now, here's the thing. Those are pointers that need to be investigated to find out, okay, what is the root cause of this, the way you are feeling? Is this something that can be resolved through just having conversations, through behavioral therapy, where you are able to attack some of these negative thoughts, these negative automatic thoughts, or do you further need medications to help with that, right? So there's a place for medical diagnosis, and the person needs to talk to a professional actually. You cannot self-diagnose depression because you are sad. But yes, sadness and feeling of helplessness are one of the pointers of a person that is experiencing depression. People should know that if they're passing through some mental health challenges, they can get help, first of all. So it's awareness. I think there's very little awareness. I think recently President signed the Mental Health Act into law or something like that. So now the awareness is gradually increasing. It's gradually increasing. Regarding the staff, professionals, of course, Nigeria is going on a brain drain. Lots of medical practitioners, actually, clinicians, they are leaving. That's a fact, honestly, that's a fact. So do we have enough to cater for over 200 million people? I don't think we do, right? And there's also the awareness. Some people do not know that they can get help for some of these things. Regarding affordability, honestly, I'll be very blunt. Quality healthcare is not cheap. That's the truth. Quality healthcare is not cheap, especially when it comes to mental health. The drugs are very expensive. Some of the drugs are really expensive, right? So, but I believe that there are government hospitals that also provide these in a very subsidized way. but people are not aware. When people hear about government hospital, for example, Yaba Neuropsychiatric Hospital, people say, Yaba, mad people. So there is this stigma already too that prevents people from seeking help, right? So there's a stigma that we hope that gradually it starts reducing. People need to know that just the way you get malaria, right, or you have an infection and you take an antibiotics, and you take your anti-malaria, you have an headache, you take a paracetamol or a painkiller for a pain. Mental health challenges too, you also get help. You're sick, get treated, right? You shouldn't be weird about it. If you don't feel weird about having a headache, having malaria, don't feel weird about having a mental health disorder, having depression, having substance use disorder, right? Having mania, having bipolar, having ADHD. You shouldn't. You're just sick and you can get treated. And people, you do get treated. Every medication has the potential for abuse. People abuse paracetamol. People abuse antibiotics. People abuse Postinol, right? So every medication has the potential for abuse. That's the truth. I'm saying that you will not take medications because, maybe you would start abusing. That is why taking such medications, especially medications in the area of mental health, should not be done without monitoring by a professional. Should not be done. In fact, most of the medications, you cannot get them in a pharmacy without a prescription because they are controlled substances. So it means that somebody has to control it. So how much of this medication are you taking? How long are you taking it for? So there's a professional that watches, okay, you shouldn't take such and such medication past such and such time because of the potential for tolerance and dependence on that medication. So everybody that's taking any medication has to be, you don't do it over the counter, like as if you're popping paracetamol. Even paracetamol, you shouldn't pop it like that, right? Because of the possible effect on your liver. So every medication that should be taken should be done under the guidance of a professional. Okay, first of all, I'll start with same awareness. Understand what this person is going through, right? For example, if a person is bipolar, so the person alternates between some moods of depressive moods and manic mood, right? A manic phase. So when you see the person being aggressive, irritable, you understand what is going on, right? And you're supportive. Now, if the person becomes angry and irritable outside, the person outside might not know that this is the condition this person has, and this is how to care for them when they're in this phase. So first of all is awareness as to what condition is my relative, is my friend suffering from. Get awareness about the condition first of all, so you know when to support and how to support. You know when they're drifting and when they're okay, right? So it starts with awareness. And that open-mindedness, knowing that this person is sick, just like anybody that has malaria. This person is sick and they need care. And in the cases of places when they will need medications, they need medications. And you find that when people adhere to either psychotherapy and pharmacotherapy, you find that they're able to do life much better, right? Like I always say, I think this is my mantra. I have it almost everywhere, even in my statuses. It's okay not to be okay. Right? The fact that you're not okay doesn't mean there's something, profoundly wrong with you, and it's okay not to be okay. What's more important is that you're able to seek help. Know when to seek help. If you feel like you're not okay and you need to get help, feel free to go look for the help. Feel free to get the help. I'm glad that we are shining light on treatment for mental health conditions. A lot of people do not know that they can get this help. Some people prefer to go other places, go and pray for something that you need the medication for, and then so first of all, it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to seek for help. Get help.
It is important to seek help for any health concern, especially when an evidence of diagnosis points to a mental health disorder. Let us cancel the culture of stigmatization, silence, and undue suppression around mental health concerns. Sharing the story of your journey through discovery, struggles to support systems and management will help someone else who is yet to seek help. For comments, contributions, and suggestions on this episode, subscribe and follow us across all of our social media platforms. Join us again for another episode of the program Healthy Living on Trust Television. I'm Aisha Salihu. Thanks for watching.